G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the round 13 stock market video. Hope you're all going well and hope you all had a rip around last week. We are almost there. There is one more buy round to go and then we get back to the regular season and start to get back to a little bit more normality, if normal is even a word that we associate with this great game of SuperCoach. I'm not too sure it is sometimes. Look, I know that some people have really struggled during the last couple of weeks. Other people have been absolutely flying and using this time to shoot up the ranks. And I think a lot of that has come down to either good planning or a fair bit of luck. We've had some big injury news this week. The man down the bottom of the list here, Max Gawn, is now looking to be out for a minimum of 4 weeks. In my opinion, he's a must trade out. We've got our captain, Dane Zorko, there, been throwing up some stinkers lately. Now injured on the bye. Is it time to move him on? Possibly. The man I've plonked right here in the middle, Sam Hayes, I have no idea what's going on with him. Was he crook last week? Was he omitted? Was it just team structure, team balance, want to try something different? I really don't know, but if he doesn't play this week, I think that we look to move him on. And for some of us, particularly those that have an English or a Darcy that can cover in the forward line, we might just look to downgrade him to one of his Port teammates in the teak. We've got Sam Doherty there towards the top of the list this week, low break even, his second highest score of the year last week. Some really nice avenues to score. I think he could be a really nice selection. And we have broken the rules with a couple of players this week. The bloke up the top here, Judson Clark, has obviously only played the one game, but given the fact we are a little bit desperate for options, we are still in the buy rounds, I will break that rule and we will discuss him because I think he will be a relevant pick. And his job security, I think for the next couple of weeks anyway, is looking okay-ish at least. Also, I need to give a big shout out to the members as well. I had some new members that have just signed up. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Victorian time, we are going to get together on Skype for our members group chat. So really looking forward to that. I'll make sure that I put all the details in a post in the members section of YouTube. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. Really looking forward to it. And I have put all of the members' names on different slides throughout this video as well, just to show you off a little bit and give you a bit of a thank you as well. So really do appreciate all of the support, guys. But look, for most of us, I think we are almost down to our last upgrade to finish off our sides. Whether or not you're looking for a defender, midfielder, ruck to maybe replace Max Gawn, or even bringing in last forward, we'll talk about all the relevant options this week. You know where we start with the defensive premiums. At the top of the list this week is one of my favourite players in the AFL, Daniel Rich, DR, you know what it's all about. The old man has been in really nice form the last month. Did have that stinker in there, but remember, he did cop a really hard tag. Unfortunately, he does have the bye this week. But if you're looking for a pod option, who is, as I said, in pretty decent form next week, then Richie is definitely worth a shout out. However, I think the man that you definitely look to bring in this week, if you don't own him, is Sam Doherty in terrific form. One of his best games of the year last week, SuperCoach-wise. It was his second best game. Had his highest kick count of the year. Took the most kick-ins. Only 6, but played on only 4 times. So that's really frustrating. Is it just a few more point stock would have got you to your best score of the season, hopefully. But certainly not complaining with that. Absolutely magnificent. The great thing with Doherty is the fact that he doesn't actually rely on those kick-ins. So remember, only 4 kick-ins would have actually counted towards his total kicks. He still had around 18, 19 if you don't even include those. So a terrific game from him. Been in nice form the last couple of weeks. Remember, the week before that had his lowest score of the season. So I've had him for the last 3 weeks. He's given me his lowest score. He's given me, I think it was 107. The second week that I owned him, which is pretty much that 3-round average, and then he gave me his second best score of the season. So it's been a little bit of a wild ride the last few weeks. We've seen the worst, what he's capable of on the average day, and then close to his best. But at this current price, given the fact that he's had his buy now, looking pretty good, I'd recommend to bring him in with a break-even of 65. Cumming and Sard, they're both pods. Couldn't really recommend those blokes, to be honest, unless you want to go right outside the box. Jack Sinclair, we certainly can recommend. That break-even is still in the green. And take a look at that 3-round average. It's 132. Very close to 600k now. He will be, or should be, most likely, over 600k by the end of the round. And he's getting really tough to trade in. Pretty much a lock, I think, for a top 3, top 4 defensive spot from here until the end of the season. And just in great form. Getting the ball a lot. Kicking it well. Running well, super damaging type player. Surely in opposition teams got to put a bit more pressure on him. But for the time being, he is looking like the hottest defender in the competition at the moment. Dale's just one of those safe as houses type picks. Ryan will miss this week. Crispy was absolutely fantastic over the weekend, but he's also got the bye. And Ridley, we can see they're at 517,000, but I don't love the selection. He does have a 3-round average of 105, which is okay, but yeah, I just think there are too many other options that I'd prefer and have above him. Dan Houston's been a really nice pod for those that selected him. 3-round average of 119, which is the second highest on this list. Dawson, I've got the tick there with the 8 ball. I think he'll be borderline top 8. What I like about Dawson is the fact that he has been playing a bit further up the ground. He was pushed back the last game that he played. I think that was mainly due to circumstances, and also really like his upcoming fixture. We know that they face North Melbourne and West Coast twice during the season. That's just fantastic for SuperCoach scoring. So do like Dawson. He's a bit of a pottish type selection. I think he's an under 10% of sides. So if you are looking for someone that's a little bit different and outside the box, and I think Dawson could be a really good selection. He'll first time under the 100 for the season, and I'll forgive him for that. Safe as houses type pick, and I think he probably deserved to get to the ton. That's okay from me. Fine to select him if you haven't got him. Shorty, I'll just keep on the watch list for now. Certainly wouldn't be investing in him until we get rid of him. Well, that's a bit of a luxury trade, isn't it? Make sure that you've got your whole team completed, and maybe after next week, just see how he goes. Maybe you could upgrade him to possibly the next man that we've got here in Tom Stewart. Now, 605,200 at the moment. You know, the last game that he played, obviously had the bye last week, but the game before that got concussed pretty early on. The game was on fire. Another 140 plus score was definitely on the cards there, but all of a sudden he finds himself with a break-even of 137. Now, what we need to remember with Stewart is the fact that that big score is still in his system. Once that goes out of his system, then he should come right back down. But the issue with that is I've said that many times already this year, and he just seems to pull out one of those huge spike games again, which allows him just to hover around that price. So there's certainly no guarantees that Stewart will come down in price. But if we're looking at, I suppose, what's most likely to happen, then we'd think that we'd be able to get him at much closer to the 550 mark. So if you can afford to wait a couple of weeks to get a defender in, then I think Stewart is a really good shout. And shout out to my man Katter. I've been speaking to Katter for years on SuperCoach Talk and now on Twitter. He actually put an idea out there, you know, is it worth actually selecting a 7th premium defender over possibly an M8, you know, a Zeret Petrarca type? And I think there's actually a little bit of merit to that. So if you could swing someone like a Sinclair, for example, into your midfield, then I think he's got a pretty high chance of averaging the same as possibly someone like a Merit type pick. That way you could then get Stewart into your back line, and that could be hunky-dory. So it's definitely a tactic that you could employ. Yeah, my man Cat is seriously thinking about, and he knows a lot about the game, really respect his opinion. And the last one we've got there is James Sicily. Obviously got the bye this week, but 3-round average 120 is the healthiest on this list. An absolute uber in our defensive line this year. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k. Not a lot to talk about here, but I will quickly touch on the man at the top of the list, Nick Dacos. He has absolutely killed me the last couple of weeks. This has been really painful. And look, my fault for trading him out. That was a really silly move. But if you watch my round reviews the last couple of weeks, you know the method behind the madness there. But with a break-even of 8, the big question is, do you actually keep on to him? I know that most of us that did select Dacos ideally would have been thinking we'll trade him just before his bye. And the time's here. The issue is he's in season best form. 2 really nice 100+ scores in the last fortnight. Absolutely looking sublime in that role. Using the footy well, getting a heap of the pill. Is he a keeper? I certainly don't think so. But at the same time, he's got a really low break even. And if you are still maybe 1 or 2 premiums away from completing your side, then probably if you are looking okay for this bye, the plan should be to hold him for another week or 2, get close to the 450 mark, and then maybe look to upgrade to someone like a Tom Stewart if you don't already have him. But completely up to you what you want to do with him. If you flip him this week, I think that's more than okay. But try to make sure you're going up to a premium if possible. Peatling, McCartan, De Koning, they're all holds if you own them. I'm personally looking to hold Paddy for the remainder of the year. Blakey, the Lizard, you just don't really go there. Whitfield, I'll touch on in a sec. The Seagull, I'm just not really interested in this year. Zorko, Pendles, McDonald all have the bye, so don't really need discussion for this week. Old B happy with trading out any of those blokes there. So if you're a Zorko owner, a Pendles owner, or a Luke McDonald owner, I think it's fine to flip them because they're just simply not looking like top 6 to 8 defenders this year. And back to Whitfield. So, man, this is another killer. You know, I trade him out. He does miss a few weeks, comes back, and then goes 100 plus. Now, what's happened with this bloke? We know that he was carrying a few niggles at the start of the year. So, obviously, he's had a little bit of time off now, rested up his body, and he looked really good on the weekend. So, coming off that back line, yeah, it's... Personally, I'd need to see another week from him. I'd definitely need to see another week from him. I know that it's tempting there when you see that score on the weekend. You know what his scoring history is like. Remember, I actually started this bloke. Many of us did at around the 500k mark. So the fact that he's at 428, we've seen a really nice game from him. He's come back. There's a new coach there now. It looks like he's putting players in their best positions, giving a few other players a go, such as your wear types, which is really good for super coaches as well. It's a tough one. I would wait one more week, see how he goes, and if you're really delighted with what he's putting out, then why not maybe go for him as your D6, or even as a luxury, maybe a swing between your M9 and possibly even D7. Onto the defenders, under 250k, and the bloke up the top, Luke Clear, it's like he's been on the bubble forever, but he is out this week anyway with health and safety protocols. Jacob Ware, been a terrific selection for those that did get him in. I missed him personally, so we'll talk about the bloke that I'm looking to get in this week. Look, I do have the buy now symbol there, but I've also got that the ship has, or look, if it hasn't, it is very, very, very close to sailing. So you could jump on him this week if you like his prospects going forward. But we'll talk about a bloke down the bottom, Sam Durden, in a minute. Boyd, you don't bring in, but if you own him, you hold. Parnell, just thought I'd chuck his name out there. Only played the one game, did get injured. Not sure if he is right, but did impress me anyway in his limited game time for his 41 points. So just someone maybe to keep an eye out in the next week or two. Buku, I think, has a couple of weeks left until Bruce comes back into the side. Got a feeling Brucey may be playing VFL this week. Should be nearing an AFL return soon, I would imagine. And the bloke down the bottom, Sam Durden. Now, I'm taking a really close look at him this week, mainly due to a bit of desperation and the fact that I do want to move my DPP defender forward into my forward line so I can then start to swing Paddy McCartan, who I'm going to keep as cover for the rest of the year. But look, with Sam Durden, took a look at his numbers. He's obviously in for Marchie, and that's such bad luck. I work with Marchie's cousin. Work with lovely lady. And, yeah, geez, he's worked hard to get back. So, shattered for the man. But, look, it does open up a door in regards to SuperCoach. McGovern's out. We know that Wiedering's out. I think that's for about the next month. So, I think the time frame for many of these players that may look to come in and take this spot that Durden's currently filling are around a month away. So, job security-wise, I think he's got about 4 weeks. Now, for some people, that may be good enough. Just take that. For me, it certainly is, mainly because he'll be covering for me this week, and I'm not actually looking fantastic for the buy this week. I'm not sure if you checked out my round review, but yeah, given the fact I've got McCartan, I'm keeping on to McCartan. They're not going to afford to have someone like a Sam Durden. So I think he's fine to bring in. His numbers, well, 2017... played 8 games from an average of 53. Did also have his highest career game with a 99. That was in the last game of the round against my boys, the Lions. 17 touches, 6 marks, and a few tackles. Onto 2018, on the one game for an average of 5. Not sure exactly what happened there. Onto 2019, highest career count, 10 games, 52 as an average. Couple of 80s there, couple of 70s as well. Few lower scores. 2020, only the 3 games for a lowly average of 37 points. Now, on the weekend, Carlton played Essendon. He did play in the VFL side, collected 14 disposals, 6 marks, and a fair sort of outing. It didn't blow the roof off, but the options are limited for the Blues, and that's no disrespect to Durden. It's just the way it is at the moment. I think that's a big reason why they actually decided to bring him in, and hasn't that been a really smart move that seems to have paid off already for the Blues? So, look, I'm pretty happy to break the rule this week in my personal circumstances. Look, ideally, always with rookies, we want to see at least a couple of games from them. Look, with Durden, as I mentioned, short-term job security is looking all right. It's him and Lewis Young at the moment, so I don't think they can afford to send him back to the VFL, even if he has a bit of a substandard game. I just don't know what other options that they can use back down there. So for me, I'm bringing him in. He hasn't had a wonderful scoring history, but if he can punch out some 50s for 4 or 5 weeks, then I think that's good enough for me. On to the midfielders, 500k plus, and there's only one bloke here in red this week, Andy Brayshaw, been in really good form the last couple of weeks. Owner's bias, I think, been, in my opinion, underscored slightly. When he comes back from the bye, if you're still looking for an upgrade, he may be someone to look at. But I'm going to go straight to the man at the top of the list this week, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple. If you don't own Tuke Miller and you're looking to bring in a premium midfielder, lock this bloke in straight away. He's got a break even of 57. He's saving a lot on his original starting price. Projected score of 119 this week. He's looking to go above 600k by the end of the round. So I highly advise bringing this man in. Had a terrific game the week before his bye against North Melbourne. I had the captaincy on him, so I was absolutely wrapped with that. And again, we know it's against North. It was a milestone game, so we did expect big things from Tuke Miller. But moving forward, the Suns have a really good chance at making finals this year, and he'll be the man that's driving this. So I expect him to have a really strong end to the season. Jump on board the Tuke train if you're not a current owner. Cripper, he's been a little bit up and down lately, hasn't he? Probably the best Carlton midfielder last week. 106 or a 3-round average. That break even is 77. He's fine to bring in, but I do have a few slight concerns, and I'd rather keep him on the watch list, maybe just for one more week, just to make sure he's absolutely back and ready. Cam Guthrie is a real pod option. I've got the wallet symbol there, also the West Coast symbol. He's been in fine form with 117 for a 3-round average. Had a pretty quiet start to the season, but we do know what this man is actually capable of. So if he scores around 100 to 110 this week, he'll go up 10 to 15k, and I do have the Eagle symbol there. He's coming up against West Coast, and he does have the potential to score really well. It's certainly no guarantee. Not every midfielder that's come up against West Coast has absolutely smashed it out of the park, but I think if you're looking for a pot option, there's a bit of a hole in your wallet, then Guthrie could be a bloke to have a look at. Now, Zeret, I was really disappointed last week. I did bring him in, but I suppose that the blow was softened a little bit with the form of Sam Walsh and Darcy Parish. He just didn't find the football too often. Couple of silly mistakes. Didn't use the ball overly well. Wasn't too bad. Nothing of a disaster type. But yeah, he's going to be an okayish M9 to M13, 14, I'd say. Benny Keys could be in the same position as Merritt, but I actually like him a little bit more. I like that contested side of his game. Just a big fan of Ben Keys. As a SuperCoach selection, I think there are better midfielders to select from. But if you want to go outside the box, I don't have a huge problem in rounding out midfield. I'm talking about your M7 to M8 with Keys. And Crouchy, well, I haven't given him enough respect. It wasn't the trap symbol. Was it the trap symbol? I may have even had the trap symbol on him, say, 5 weeks ago. And I'll put my hand up. It was just a bit of a bad call. I've never really had faith in this selection. I don't love his durability. I think he's a little bit hot, a little bit cold, not the best user of the ball. But he's really, really stepped up, particularly in the absence of Jack Steele. The issue now is that he's 573k, and he's competing against someone like a Tuke Miller, a Brayshaw, not this week Brayshaw, but next week, and Cripper type. So I would much rather go on Miller, but if you're looking for an ultra type pod, then you could go Brad Crouch. I just wonder how much the inclusion of Jack Steele will affect him. I can't answer that. I've never been a fan of the pick, but go for it if you've got the faith. We got 2 blokes in red in Oliver and Neil, 2 of the absolute must-haves this year. Get them into your side if you haven't after next week. Jelly, I've got as a buy now, along with the caution. Never loved his durability. Turner put a hard tag on him over the weekend, limited his impact. Many people that owned Kelly would have had the captaincy on him, expecting a really big score. A little bit unfortunate, but certainly not disaster like a Walsh or a Parish we'll get to in a minute. Ollie Wines, I've never really liked as a selection. I normally just skip past him. Jack McRae, I can never completely lose the faith with this bloke after what he has delivered for the last however many years now. Seems like forever. 104 for a 3-round average. Break even is in the red with 128, but do not be surprised to see him go 130 plus this week. Callum Mills, again, I've got him as a buy now. Is he an absolute must-have? I think he's in the top 5 midfielders in the comp. So at 622,000, his 3-round average is 111, break-even is 130. But very similar to Stewart in our backline, this bloke can just have one of those massive spike games, which means that all of a sudden he becomes out of our range again. So if you are interested in Mills, I still think it's okay to bring him in this week. Now, Sam Walsh, this was really disappointing for owners, wasn't it? I had recommended him as a really nice trading option last week and just didn't see a score like this happening. To be honest, Paddy Cripps was the only midfielder from Carlton that scored anything half decent. Walsh, I think an issue for him is the fact that he does have a lack of CBAs, starting more on the half-forward line than pushing in to that midfield, so that's not helping him, but I still think he's going to be a really good selection. 3-round average of 110 was looking a lot rosier last week after those 3 games he'd had on the trot. Really nice scores there. Do you bring him in this week? Well, with that break even, ideally you wait, then that poor score will get out of his system, then you bring him in, but if you can't wait, it's tough. I would much rather go a Mills type, a McRae type over him. Now, Parrish, I don't know what the situation is with him in regards to his injury. I certainly would not look to invest. I think that's a pretty obvious one. But if you're an owner, it's a tough decision. If he's out for 1 to 2, then I'd be pretty keen to hold if you can afford to do so. But if not, if he's out for longer, he's a must trade. If he's only out for the 1 week, I think he's a definite hold. It's just really tough, isn't it, that this has happened during the bye round. You would have been relying on a Parrish, particularly if you brought him in last week. You'd be thinking, wrapped, he's coming off his bye, cover for the next 2, everything's rosy. And then unfortunately, he has some trouble with the calf. So I'm not sure how severe it is. You just have to wait and see and track the injury news, I think. On to the midfielders, 250 to 500k, and we got 3 blokes in red here. Jared Berry been in fine form last 3 weeks, 108 for that 3-round average. Titch, who's been extremely underwhelming this year, 3-rounder of only 83. And Christian Petrarca, wowee, 487,000. We thought we were getting him at a good price, sort of low to mid 500s, but he's just plummeted the last 3 weeks. Do you look to trade him out? Well, I'd actually hold, unless you're absolutely desperate to move someone on this week. At the price it is currently at 487, you're simply not getting value. You're losing money here. So if you look back to his average last year after the bye, that was really, really healthy. So I'm personally going to keep the faith. But if you've got the luxury to be able to move him on this week, that's okay. All I'm saying is you're just not really getting a heap of value there. 3 blokes at the top. You got Shield, Hobbs and Rao. Hobbs has been fantastic for us this year. Shield, you obviously keep if you've got him, but we certainly don't look to invest there. Same as Rao, don't invest there. But if you're an owner still, I don't think there should be too many people, but you definitely look to hold there. Boak, I've got the wallet symbol there. 496,100, still under 500k. Had a good game over the weekend, but still that 3-round average is only 99. So he is priced under 500k for a reason. I usually have the old man symbol there, but I have replaced that with a wallet. If you like Boak as a pick, he's a cheap option that you could maybe look to select. Tom Green, 495,500. Not someone I would invest in again, but we certainly hold. Ward is a real pod, but that 3-round average of 69 compared to that break even isn't looking fantastic. Keep in mind though, there was an injury affected game there. On to the midfielders under 250k, and as you can see here, the cupboard is pretty bare. We'll quickly talk about some of these blokes. Flynn Perez is the only one in red. Defensive midfielder. I'd actually be looking, if possible, to keep on to him as cover for the rest of the year. And the reason why I like him as cover is the fact that he's got that defensive mid status. Many of our premium defensive options this year do have that DPP status. If you can manage to swing Perez into your midfield, then he'll provide a really, really handy loop. The bloke up the top, Mitch Owens, feels so sorry for this bloke. A really popular trading option this week, even the week before, and for some teams, I've held him for the entire year as a loophole option, but he went head first into a couple of contests. We all know what happened to him. Super unfortunate. Does he come back into the side? I think it's going to be a pretty tough side to break into because still, how far is he away? I think he's getting closer. You got Hunter Clark, Billings to come in. There's a few players that are absolutely breathing down his neck, and he was pretty lucky, even though I think well deserved. If you look at some of the other blokes that did miss the game last week, then he's really on the borderline as it is best case scenario. So unfortunately, I think that he may be a little bit of a dead rookie, but hopefully has a good recovery and can come in as cover for a few games later on in the season. Clark, I'd recommend holding for sure as cover, most likely for the rest of the season. And Stevens and Carroll, well, Stevens, I don't know if he's going to play this week. If he's not playing, you need to get rid of someone, and he's your worst option. I think it's fine. And Carroll, I'm personally highly considering trading him, not even on the emergency list, so not looking likely for a game anytime soon. And again, another one of those dead rookies. Onto the rucks, and you can see that I've really culled down the list here. I don't think there's any point talking about all of these pod type selections, the Strandika, Dixon types, because I think most of us, if we're going to downgrade in the rucks, are going to go to Bryn Teak or the Teak and use him as a DPP loop. But we should probably start with the big news of the round when it comes to the rucks, and that is the injury to Max Gawn. It's Jared Healy's favourite word, syndesmosis. He's out for at least a month. Now, in my personal opinion, you may disagree. I think he's an absolute must trade out. I think it's just really tough, particularly on a line like our rucks, where we've only got the 2 on field and 1 emergency, to carry a bloke like Gawn for that amount of time. He's worth over 600k as well. I just think that you got to move him on. Now, the main issue here is the fact that we've got limited options. Jared Witts, in my humble opinion, is by far the best option here. You must look at someone like Jared Witts. He has been ultra consistent. The teams he does play twice this year, the teams he's coming up against, again, he's scored a minimum of 117 against all those opponents this year. He's been ultra durable, which again has been a bit of a surprise to me. Has a decent fixture, a few tough matchups here and there, but he's been kissed pretty well this year, hasn't he, by the SuperCoach gods in relation or in regards to the opponents that he's come up against. So clearly my number 1 option would be Jared Witts. Number 2, I think, is Timmy English. He's close to a must-have. We know they're disappointed the week before his bye, but remember the week before that 160, we look at his season average. He's going to be our F1. Even that 3-rounder with the poor score the week before the bye, as I mentioned, is still 126. So I think he's a must-have. Preferably, I'd like to have him in your forward line so he can actually provide cover in your rucks. If you're running someone like a Darcy Cameron, then that's fine, I think, to have English in your rucks. But keep in mind as well with the Cameron pick, absolutely on fire at the moment. We'll talk about him when we get to the forwards. But with the return of Brodie Grundy, surely that's got to affect his ceiling in a pretty big way. So, love the Darcy selection for now, and he can cover. But, preferably English in your forward line. The other option you got there is Nank. Now, I won't even mention the move that I made last week, but he's got a 3-round average of 118. He's a pod in under 4% of sides, coming up against Carlton this week. And in really positive news for the very, very few Nank owners, Soldo's been omitted. So he is coming up against De Koning, and I think that with his body strength, his experience, that he should have a pretty good time against him. The issue is that Carlton have a really strong midfield. Will they be roving to Nank? And hey, with his athletic ability, then De Koning may actually give a good showing. I'm not too sure. But he's the other option that you've got there. But if you compare him to an English Witts type, you just can't. You just can't. Now, how about if you're a Witts owner and English is in your forward line? What on earth do you do there? It's a tough decision. I can't advocate bringing Nank into your side. That 3-rounder's looking good, but watching him over the weekend, he doesn't do enough around the ground for me. Look, you can get those contested possessions. As I said, the positive and the difference from last week going into this week is the fact that Soldo's out of the side. And Soldo did take a fair few of those ruck contests as well. Nank's time on ground was a little bit down. So that's a positive. Does Soldo come back into the side? Is it team dependent? I'm really not too sure, but I wouldn't advocate bringing him in. If you're keen for a pod, maybe. But as soon as I brought this bloke in last week, I had instant regret. And as I mentioned in my round review, my heart just sank. So, for me, it's Witts, English, and then it's probably Nank, isn't it? You got Darcy. Look, I still really like Darcy, even though he looked a little bit lethargic on the weekend. The big difference between Darcy and Gawn is that Darcy doesn't look dangerous around the ground. Even when he gives that option down the line, it's usually a pack. It's rarely in a one-on-one situation where he can really use his body strength and take advantage of that. So he's got a huge ceiling. he's got a nice draw coming up. And again, a few tougher matches here and there. He's just got the bye. It's a really tough situation. And look, we better finish this ruck discussion. Two blokes up the top, Braden Prucewell. Who knows if he's going to play? Same issue with Hayes. I was really relying on him last week. If Hayes doesn't play this week, I think that the play is to just bring the teak in, make a couple of 100,000, and then upgrade somewhere else. Same as Pruce. If he plays, you absolutely hold, in my opinion anyway. If he doesn't, then it just may be time to move him on. But unfortunately, with Gawn down and Darcy with the bye, it's not a great week for the Rucks. On to the forwards, 500k plus, and we've got two blokes here in red, Darcy Cameron and Will Brodie, both been terrific selections for us this year. I think if you can afford to hold both of these blokes, hold. Cameron will be fantastic, at least until Grundy comes back. If you're an advocate for holding Gawn, which again I don't recommend, but if you are keen on doing that and you own Darcy Cameron, get a teak in there as that DPP swing as your R3 and allow Cameron to cover for the next month. I think he's been a great selection. When Grundy comes back, you probably may need to look to trade him out. So maybe make sure you have a trade up your sleeve to be allowed to do that. And by that time, in current form, surely he's got to be around the 550k mark at least. And Will Brodie, he's still looking good, I think. Even though Fife's come back into the side, I don't think he had a huge effect on Brodie's score last week. I think it was more his efficiency. Same sort of time on ground. I don't think a lot changed for him. He's been playing that role all year, been playing it really well, so I wouldn't be really changing the winning formula. I know that it's Nat Fife. He will definitely spend some time in the midfield. We saw that, but he'll also be spending a little bit of time up forward as well. And apart from that, it's pretty much pick the dog, isn't it? Luke Parker's the only non-dogs play here. I think he's a buy it now. Fine trade in. Break-even's just under the green there, but he'll give you a pretty consistent score, I think, from week to week. We'll get Baz out of the way, all the way down the bottom. What other symbols do you have apart from the Sell and the Muppet symbol? He's an absolute must trade out, in my opinion. If you want to hold the faith, I suppose that you can, but I don't see why. He's out for a minimum of, 2 weeks. Missed last week. You probably already got rid of him, I think, by now. The Bont, if I could select anyone here, it would probably be the Bont. Well, Dunkley, we've all got Dunkley, so I'm not even going to discuss Dunkley. I'm just assuming that we've all got him by now. What's the issue with the Bont? Well, we all know what it is. It's that question about how his body's actually holding up. Shoulder, ankle. Apparently he's been carrying this for the majority of the season. And the positive in that is the fact that he's still been able to maintain a really solid 110 average. And when I say really solid, we're not talking uber midfield type numbers here. But remember, we're not treating him as a midfielder. We are treating him purely as a forward. So you're getting him for under 600k. He's been dealing with it pretty well. He's had the week off now. Hopefully recovered. I think this could be a really good selection moving forward. Bruce is maybe a week or two away. I think that could mean good things for Bont. Baz is out, as we know. Does that mean he spends a little bit more time in the midfield? I'm really not too sure. But even when he does spend time forward, we know that he's a champion data love child, and he still manages to go above the ton most weeks. So if you've got the cash to facilitate the trade, then I really like this selection. Dunkley, as I mentioned, I think we've all got. Treloar, it's the same thing. I've got the caution symbol on there. Watch him. But if you look at that 3-round average, 95, it's clearly the lowest on the list. I just don't know why you'd go there. And Libber is the other bloke that we've got here just underneath Darcy Cameron. And all of a sudden, he's become a pretty realistic trading option for me. So I've got the choice, and I've nailed it down to 3 this week. We'll talk about one of the blokes in a minute. You won't find him on this slide. The other 2 blokes being the Bont and Libber. So I've already talked about the Bont. What do I like about Libber? Well, he's definitely a pod selection. Do I like that or do I not? Well, I haven't got a heap of pods in my side. You've got your Nank, your Darcy types. But apart from that, I think my next pod is probably someone like a Doherty, who's again going to become a really popular selection. So in my personal situation, if I'm looking to go up the ranks, this could be a bit of a riskier move that I look to make. His CBA count is really friendly at the moment. We know that Baz won't be in the side for the short term anyway. I think that means good things for Libber. And even pretty much when they've had their full complement, he's still been really, really favoured in there. And if you look at his 2 or 3 low scores this year, it directly correlates to his CBA count. I think he had one on one occasion, even none on the other occasion. Whenever he has a pretty decent CBA count, he'll most likely go over the ton. So I do not mind Libba as a selection. The only concern I've got is if he finds himself outside of the midfield. Once Baz comes back, once Bruce comes back, you'd expect Bont to probably spend even more time there. Is Hunter going to come back? I'm really not too sure what's going to happen with these rotations moving forward. But as things currently stand, and certainly short term anyway, I think that he'll be a pretty decent selection. Does play GWS a couple of times, and I'm really expecting him, particularly this week, because we know what the relationship is between the Dogs and the Giants. I'm expecting Libba to come out really, really hard. I'm expecting a really high tackle count. So he's really tempting me. And the reason why he's tempting me, and maybe over someone like a Bomb, which I know is a bit of a crazy move, is the fact that I do need a little bit more money in the bank in order to most likely fix up my Nank decision from last week and get him back up to a wit. So if I go someone like a Bomb, and again, you might find yourself in this situation as well, then you may not be able to make another trade that you want to without maybe making a double trade rather than just the one, by having 50, 60k, whatever you've got or whatever you need in the bank. So that could certainly sway a decision either way. If money's not an option, then I like the Bont as number one. I think Parker definitely as a selection, and then Libba is the other bloke that I like, keeping in mind that I'm assuming everyone's got Dunkley. So the blokes I'm really skipping here, obviously this week going to be Darcy and Brody because they're not playing. I'm skipping Trelaw, I'm skipping Baz. So I like any of the other options. Take your pick. Whichever one you haven't got, I think it's fine to bring in. On to the forwards, 250 to 500k. Now, there are a few blokes I want to have a quick chat about here. Only the one bloke in red, Kitty Coleman. Been playing some really nice football recently, and I think, definitely in our top three last week. Been really impressive for mine. Joel Jeffrey, Roses, I think you both definitely hold if you own them. If you don't own them, you don't look to invest. Jack Graham, definitely a pod selection. 105 for a 3-rounder. Not really realistic selection for us, I don't think. And Mitch Duncan down the bottom. We've seen a couple of good games from Duncan, but been super inconsistent. Age, durability worries me. Role can change from week to week, so a little bit risky. I'd need to see him hit a pretty fine patch of form to even consider him. Now that leaves me with three blokes that I do want to have a quick chat about in Himmelberg, Cogs, and Jeremy Cameron. So with Jeremy Cameron, is he going to be a keeper for the rest of the year? I certainly don't think so, but if you look at that 3-round average, 120, he's in great form. And again, I've got the roller coaster, but I do have it going up this week, given the fact that he is playing West Coast. Tommy Hawkins I don't have on this list either. I probably should have included him. Maybe Cameron or Hawkins, ultra pod selections. Use maybe a Cameron as a bit of a cash grab this week. Maybe hope that he goes around the 120 mark and sustains that 3-round average. Who knows? He could go more. Obviously could go less. We know what it's like owning key forwards. But short term, he's looking like a pretty nice cash grab and certainly would be a pod selection to bring in this week. And talk about a pod type selection. How's this bloke at the top of the list? Harry Himmelberg. I actually know a couple of blokes that bought him in before the start of last week. So hats off to you fellas. Awesome trade in. It was a pod move, I tell you what. And I, for one, certainly didn't see this coming. Now, what's happened the last couple of weeks? I think it's got a lot to do with that symbol in the notes section, the old role reversal. So we've seen this happen with forwards before. Things haven't been going overly well. Let's give them a new lease on life, or even troll them down in the back line, see how they go, and they tend to flourish. This has certainly happened with young Harry. So against the Lions a couple of weeks ago, scored a 126, had 20 kicks, 7 marks and 4 tackles. And then last week against a lowly launched Melbourne, 187 points, which included 25 kicks, 12 handballs, so 37 touches, a massive 16 marks, as well as a couple of tackles. Over 50% of the kick-ins, which is really nice, sharing them with Cumming at the moment, and had, I think it was 5 of around 15, around 30 to 40% from memory the week before. Now, the issue with selecting someone like a Harry Himmelberg is we've never seen scoring like this before, but what we need to keep in mind is that role reversal. We can't really take into account how he's been scoring in the forward line because it's basically a different game for him. Now, big question is, does he actually stay in the role? You know, we got someone like Haynes that can't even get a game at the moment. Does he come back into the side? Not really looking likely at this stage. What's happened with Nick Haynes? Was it a couple of years ago? He was a terrific selection, then absolutely fallen off the face of the planet in regards to SuperCoach relevance. But we don't really need to talk about him. We need to talk about Mr. Harry Himmelberg. So, look, if he does keep the role, I actually think that he may be worth the punt. You know, he's intercepting, distributing, taking the kick-ins, even sneaked up, as I mentioned, to kick a goal over the weekend. He's just a real pod-type selection who could work out really well, or else if he goes back to his forward role, he could absolutely crash and burn. He doesn't have an ultra-good fixture coming up. Got a couple of nice games, but we're not talking North Melbourne or West Coast. He's already had his fun there. I think it was about an 80 he scored against West Coast from memory, but again, I think he played up forward. And even if it was down back, 80 is okay, particularly when you pair it with a 126 and a 187. So if you got the kahunas to go there, maybe if you've got a couple of spare trades up your sleeve, you could bring him in. And that way, if it doesn't work out, you can get out of him. And you know for a fact that at least short term in the next 2 weeks, he'll be making a fair bit of coin. He'll be pushing definitely towards 500, if not well over that. So if you can hit that projected score, and that's just an 81, he goes up 63k this week. I tell you what, I'm almost talking myself into bringing this bloke in. Unfortunately, I just don't have the trades to do it. If I had a couple of extra trades up my sleeve, I would personally make this move. But for me, I do need a forward, but whoever I bring in must be a keeper, and I will not have the luxury to trade them back out again. So in my personal circumstances, Harry is too risky, but in your circumstances, he may be the ultimate pick, even for the next 4 to 5 weeks. And then we've got Cogs. Oh, I tell you what, this man has the best 3-round average in the comp. And when did I trade him out? Exactly 3 weeks ago. So 174 on the weekend. It was cruel as a non-owner. And I don't know why they persisted with tagging Jelly. You know, they allowed this man to get 34 touches, 3 tackles, and 3 goals too. It's just amazing. I would have 100% switched the tag. But again, this is probably because I'm a very, very salty at this stage non-owner, but I've got to take hold of my own decisions. Now, do we select him moving forward? I do have the buy now symbol on him because I think there is a chance that he reaches top 6. There is a chance, but the question I keep asking myself is, will he continue to score well when he doesn't play a West Coast or North Melbourne type side? I just don't know. He obviously doesn't play North or West Coast again. His fixture will obviously get a lot harder, given the fact that he's played them within the last 3 weeks. So it's a really tough decision for me moving forward. Because as I mentioned, I'm looking to bring a forward into my side this week. And Cogs has got to be a realistic selection. It's tough if you did trade him out a few weeks ago after that 37, because you're paying almost 500k now, but you've got to take a bit of the emotion out of the game. Just suck it up, just like George did with Will Brodie, and that's turned out to be a great decision getting him back into your side. So it could be a very, very similar situation with Cogs. So I think with Spike coming in, he's playing players in their correct positions and experimenting well. An example is someone like a Harry Himmelberg. So I expect, and just quickly getting back to Himmelberg, if you ask me, I do expect him to continue in that role at least short term. Why wouldn't you? It's been working really well the last couple of weeks. I just don't know why you'd change a winning formula. And when I say a winning formula, went down against the Lions, but they did put up a pretty good showing and make us really earn that victory. So with Cogs, back to him. If you want to bring him in this week, I've got absolutely no issues. You look at that 3-round average, as I said, best in the comp, 133, break even of 29. Even if he goes just under the ton, he's going up 30k, and very, very quickly, he's becoming, getting anyway to a premium price. So I don't mind the move, but there may be someone like a Libba that suits your fancy a little bit more. You might want to pay up for someone like a Bontempelli. Very team dependent, but I'm only talking to about half the comp here because I know that over 50% of you that are listening still own him. And congratulations if you held. On the next list, we've got 3 blokes in red: Sidey, Anderson, and De Goey. Anderson bit up and down. De Goey, ordinary type of the season. And side bottom, I did have the trap symbol on a couple of weeks ago, and he did deliver a bit of a trap score over the weekend. Other blokes, you got Baker, defensive forward status, really nice 3-round average with 109. Got the 5 symbol there, got the pod symbol there. But when we look at the other options that we have available in front of us, both now to forward and offensive lines, then I don't really think he comes into calculations. Butters has been okay for the last month. 3-rounder of 103. Wasn't awesome over the weekends, but he'll probably end up as a F7 to 10 type pick, in my opinion. Durden, now this is a bit of a tough one, because if you're a current owner, what do? Do you keep or do you sell? If you're really struggling for 18 on field this week, then I probably think that you've just got to keep him and then lose a bit of coin. But if you can comfortably field 18, then this is certainly the week to move him on if you can. Gresham, yeah, he's been okay, but keeper status, probably not. Maybe just a little bit under Butters in my ratings. Isaac, well, I got rid of him a couple of weeks ago. Decent-ish, the last game that he played before his bye, but someone that I couldn't say to bring in with great confidence. I do have the wallet symbol there. If you're desperate and you're a believer, you can go for it. And Dusty is not playing this week. If you own him, what do? It was probably a little bit silly trading him in the first place. It's a tough call. I don't really know what you do there. And we'll finish off with the forwards under 250k. And as you can see here, we do have 3 blokes in red, all out of action this week. Curtis and the 2 Hawthorn boys in Butler and McDonald. And just on a side note, I was shattered that Connor McDonald didn't get up this week. Prevented me from fielding 18. Ended up going with a 17. Yeah, just bad luck. But I think he had 20 disposals and 9 tackles in the VFL. So maybe expect him to get a recall after the bye. But we are left with 2 Richmond boys here, Clark and Rioli. So obviously Rioli didn't play last week. Judson Clark debuted, and I'd tell you what, wasn't he on fire in the first quarter? A couple of nice snags. Did end up on 63 points, 11 touches, 5 of those contested, and a few tackles. So what's going to happen down there moving forward at Tigerland? Well, we know this week already news has come through that Clark does have the nod. Rioli is listed as an emergency, so it's a possibility. Not too sure what happens there. But moving forward and looking into the future, well, I think Clark at least has a couple of games up his sleeve. Rioli played a decent game on the weekends, kept a couple of goals, 5 tackles, so laid a little bit of pressure. But it's really what you got: Clark, Rioli, and Castagna as well. So at the moment, there's one of these blokes playing in the side, which is Clark. Will they maybe chuck a couple in for a bit of a different mix? I'm not too sure. So you'd expect probably at least, well, you'd definitely expect one of the 3 to be in the side at any one point. So if you've got both Clark and Rioli in your side, then that may be a bit of a play, because you've really got a 66% chance that at least one of them will be playing. That chance may be good enough for you, or it may not be. That's just my opinion moving forward. But look, if you're looking to go someone this week, I do have the rule breaker symbol there, because Clark's only played the 1 match. But if you're looking for a downgrade option, particularly someone that's got DPP status available as a mid or a forward, then I think you can get Clark in. And the other bloke that I haven't even mentioned here, and maybe I should have, similar to what I did with Durden, but we've also got Elijah Hollands, who does have a chance to come in this week. We've been saying that all year, haven't we? But he's been playing some pretty decent football. We'll just see what happens with the team sheets this week. But that's all we've got for the forwards under 250k. If you're looking to go someone this week, at this stage, we're definitely looking to go Clark. So that's it from me for now, guys. All the best of luck for this week. Much peace, much love, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.